Welcome back to the Tracy Take. Today, Ryan and I will be doing another NFL mock draft here. We're 2 weeks away from the draft. We are really looking forward to it. But before we get into the draft, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Ryan and I, we have a goal of trying to get to 400 subscribers by the NFL draft. We're only a couple weeks away. So if this is your first time here, any help would be greatly appreciated. In other news, also, Ryan and I, we will be doing a live stream of the first round. So please join us on our YouTube channel that Thursday night. It's going to be a lot, not this Thursday, but next Thursday. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are really looking forward to it. And I think with that being said, Ryan, let's get into this. So another mock draft. We have done a couple of these now, and they have a lot of stuff has changed. Our picks have changed, and also kind of who has which picks. And so we're going to do it again, and we're going to have the similar format as we did last time because we heard a lot of good feedback from there. And also I think Ryan and I kind of like that format the best. So what we will do is we'll go pick by pick. Ryan will do the odds because he's a Patriots fan and they're picking on an odd number. I'll do evens because I am unfortunately a Falcons fan and they are picking even. And we're going to have a little discussion with each pick, but at the end, though, the person who is going to be choosing on that one will have the final say on who they think should pick. And so with that being said, Ryan, let's get started off with you with the first overall pick. Who is Jacksonville going to be picking?
So, in my opinion, I think that this is a pretty easy race. I think Aiden Hutchinson is by far the number one overall prospect. I think Jacksonville has done enough on the offensive line to kind of bolster up some of the holes that they had last year. And also, too, this is a very deep offensive line class. I think top of the second, top of the third is another place that they could really add depth at the offensive line. And I think Aiden Hutchinson is a plug-and-play starter for them, and I think he is probably the best player in this class. So I'm going to go here with Aiden Hutchinson. Do you have any quarrels with that pick?
No, I don't really think there's – it's like I don't think they can really go wrong here with this pick. Aiden Hutchinson is going to be a great pick.
Yeah.
Evan Neal's going to be a great pick. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be a great pick. So, I mean, and they have whoever they can choose from is going to be their choice. Yeah. I think Aiden Hutchinson – I also think it's might not be the sexiest of picks. Kayvon Thibodeau might be the sexiest pick here. But I think it's the smartest one. I think he is going – I think he's more ready now. In the NFL. Now, his ceiling might not be as high as some of the other guys, but I think his floor isn't as low.
Yeah. I think he is just an extremely solid prospect. I think plug-and-play starter and kind of make up for some of what they thought they were going to get out of K'Lavon Chaisson out of LSU a few years ago and kind of help just fill in that role. So, Up next is the Detroit Lions. You have this pick. Who do you think they are taking here? And I'll scroll down a little so you can see some more.
So there was a lot of attention last year on the offensive side of the ball for the Lions. I think this year there's going to be mainly defensive side of the ball. And I think they're going to take whoever the Jaguars don't take when it comes to the edge rushers. And I'm going to go with Kayvon Thibodeau here. I think he is going to fit in extremely well. He is absolutely gifted, like a physical beast. And I think he's going to fit in well. And he's going to be immediately, first day, one of the best edge rushers that they have on that team.
Yeah, and to me, I think it's a clear-cut sign that they are going to go with the other edge rusher because they released Trey Flowers. They don't really have any dominant presence on the edge, and so I just think you get 1A, 1B with Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau. I think those are the pretty much clear two best edge rushers in this class. So yeah, and then up next are the Houston Texans. To me, this is where things get a little interesting. They can go a lot of different ways. As you can see here on PFF, it says every position is their need. And so I think they're just going to go best player available. And honestly, I really think even though Derek Stingley has fallen down a ton of draft boards, I still think he is going to be worth the risk because his upside is a top 5 corner in the league. When healthy, he can cover anyone. And so I think that's probably the pick that they go with here.
So yeah, I think Derek Stingley is a good pick. Has a lot of upside. I think though, with them picking 13th, I think they could potentially get him, if not another cornerback here at this time, with that pick. I think here you have all the offensive linemen available that you would like, and so they also could go with Evan Neal. Obviously, they go with Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross also potentially as well. They could also, maybe if they want to dip their toes in and get another edge rusher, Trayvon Walker, but also I think that's another position as well that will be available there. But I think here picking somewhere in the secondary, either Derek Stingley or Kyle Hamilton, I think also would fit the bill as well. I think maybe a little high on Derek Stingley, but that being said, it's not a bad pick.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think he's probably just the best player left on the board. I know you could go with one of these offensive tackles, and you may be able to get a guy, a corner later, but I think he's just the best player available, and I think that's who I'm going to go with right there. So I agree that they could go multiple different ways, but I do think they really need secondary help. So,
Yeah. Well, for me, sticking with the secondary with the New York Jets, I'm going to go with a name I just mentioned. I'm going to go with Ahmad Gardner. I think Jets, another team, spent a lot of focus on the offensive side of the ball last year. I think this year now is definitely going to be very defensive focused. I think Ahmad Gardner has been doing really well in his pro days. We obviously know how great of a college career that he had. I think he's going to fit in well with that system because, if I'm not mistaken, right, they like to do a lot of press man, and that's something that he did constantly.
Yeah, Robert Saleh likes to play very aggressive, let those defensive ends and linebackers really get after the quarterback. And with that, I mean, he's going to be playing a lot of press man playing in a scheme that I think is going to fit him really well. As a Patriots fan, I hate that pick because I think Ahmad Gardner is a Jalen Ramsey-esque corner. So I think that's a very good pick for the New York Jets.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after that, we have the other New York team, the New York Giants, and
I will say before you make your pick, this is a dream scenario, I think, for the Giants. All the top offensive linemen are still there, and that is the clear number one need for the Giants. I know it says, I think, it does say QB. I know people say they need QB. I think right here is an absolute dream scenario for them. They get to choose who they want to pick, and also potentially one of those other guys is still also going to be available as well. So who are the Giants going to be picking here?
So in my opinion, I really like Akim Ekwonu and his position versatility because the Giants need somebody who can come in and just play football on the offensive line. But I also think Evan Neal is the best tackle. So I'm a little torn on who I actually want to take here. What do you think? Wise, do you think you should go with position versatility or tackle?
I think position versatility. Okay. Because let's say if you want Ike Ekwonu to play right tackle or left tackle, it doesn't work out, move him over into guard. Giants need all the help they can get, so I think having that position versatility.
Yeah.
Not saying that he's better than Evan Neal. I think it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But he's 6'4", 6'5", and a guard. Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah.
Evan
Neal
close.
would be really tough to put in at guard because he's so big.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 6'7". Yeah, it's going to be really tough.
So Akim Ekwonu is going to be my pick. I just think the Lions get an extremely versatile and safe pick on the offensive line right there, and a guy that can come in and play right tackle for them day one. So yeah.
Let me see here. So now moving on to Carolina, and also I would say a dream scenario as well for the Panthers who need offensive line help. I know there's all this talk of potentially them taking a quarterback. I don't think that is going to happen. I was reading something today, and I'm not saying that it's true, but even a scouting report on Malik Willis, who's probably one of the more favorite quarterbacks to be taken number one overall. He's got great arm strength, great accuracy, but doesn't read the field very well. And that's number one. Like, you need to have that.
Yeah.
And as a QB coming in. So whether it be like with Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, all those guys, it's an adjustment, but for him it would be such a huge leap. I think taking him 6th overall would be a very big risk. That's why I think they're going to steer clear from quarterbacks.
Especially with the offensive line they currently have. That's just huge.
And with Evan Neal sitting right there, I don't see how they could pass up Evan Neal. I think that would be absolutely people will get fired if they pass up on Evan Neal in this situation.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. He can play right or left tackle, just kind of depending on what they currently have there. And I just think that is a great pick for them.
Mm-hmm.
So picking for the Giants again, Charles Cross to me is the first name that jumps out. I really think that the Giants will double dip. And then if it doesn't work out, you can kick him into guard. He is more specifically a left tackle. Let me see kind of where... Yeah, he played all of his snaps except for 4 snaps in college at left tackle. So that does limit him a little bit. However, I don't think it's impossible for him to play right tackle because they do have Andrew Thomas who is there. So I think that's probably the pick. I think the Giants double dip and get 2 extremely powerful offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what other offensive lineman options there are in this scenario. But just with how weak that Giants offensive line is, because the Giants need to improve in a lot of areas. But if they can get a just formidable offensive line, who knows kind of how competitive they can be, because it's still their division's not that difficult. Cowboys are turning it on, yes. And the Eagles might have found something, but they're still both franchises are still very inconsistent and with that division. If they get somewhat of a formidable offensive line, who knows how competitive they can be in the division next year. So I do like that pick in this scenario. And so then now moving on to my Atlanta Falcons here. It's funny, the top edge rushers, top corners, and all the top offensive linemen are gone in this scenario. And scroll down just a little bit here. I kind of want to see. I don't know. It feels because if we take a receiver here, we would be taking the best receiver in the class. Mm-hmm. But even then, there's still a lot of good talent later on in the draft that we can choose from. And we just need so much help. I'm surprised actually with the Falcons, it's not similar to the Texans where it's every position needs where we need some help. But I think I'm going to stick. What are your thoughts here?
Best player available, in my opinion, is Kyle Hamilton. Now, I think he will fall a little bit because he is a safety. And so maybe 8 is where he falls to. I'm a huge fan of Trent McDuffie. He would be great to pair with not Andrew Booth. What's the Falcons corner?
Oh, crap.
I can picture his name. Or picture him.
Am I a true Falcons fan if I don't know this?
Is it AJ?
AJ Terrell.
AJ Terrell, that's what it is.
Yeah. So my one thing with that, though, is they've had a lot of signings that they have done in the offseason right now to really address that cornerback position. Okay. They just signed that Raiders cornerback a couple weeks ago, Damian Howard, I think.
Yeah. So it's something like that.
Is it? Yeah.
but he's a good corner. I think you're looking at Trayvon Walker, Kyle Hamilton.
Sorry.
One of those guys.
Well, and that's what I would love to take an offensive lineman here, but I think it's just a stretch in all scenarios. And so for me, I do think addressing the pass rush here is probably the smartest thing to go with the players here. And so this might be kind of a leap, but keeping it in state. I know we talked about him a little bit before on the pre-show, but Trayvon Walker I think potentially could be a name that sneaks into the top 10. And I know the Falcons need to address that pass rush. Mm-hmm. And he's also very versatile on the run defense as well. So I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker here.
Okay. He is a prospect that I really like. I am curious to see what he will do on a defensive line that is not loaded with 2 other first-rounders. So
that's fair.
I'm curious to see how his skill set translates to the pros, but I think him being the first Georgia defensive tackle off the board is fitting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting spot because it's kind of like there's so many options and different paths that the Falcons can go with here. Because you're right, Kyle Hamilton's still there. But they did draft Richie Grant last year, who was looking like he's going to start taking over the safety spots. So that's where it's just an interesting. It's almost like too many picks, which is probably a good thing. So
yeah. There's too many picks. They just have to pick the right one. So up next are the Seattle Seahawks. They definitely need. They're on that list of teams that need just about everything. And coming in at 9. I'm really curious to see which direction they go. I'm leaning towards Kyle Hamilton here. I think he's just the best player. I know that they don't really have. I guess they have Jamal Adams. I'm not a huge fan of Jamal Adams. I think he's extremely overrated as a player. But I think if they get a guy like Kyle Hamilton, that will allow Jamal Adams to play in the box more. And play more of that strong safety role and let Kyle Hamilton be the rangy safety that he is, even though he can do pretty much everything. The other option, it would be a guy like Trent McDuffie or maybe reaching on like a Bernard Raymond or a Garrett Wilson prospect.
Yeah. Similar to the Falcons, I think Seattle just has so many different ways that they can go, because they're also in definitely this rebuilding phase. Because I think right now isn't Drew Lock their starting quarterback?
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's not going to be turn out very well for any of the parties involved. So they're definitely in a rebuilding phase. And I think taking Kyle Hamilton here, I think he might be the best player on the board, with some versatility as well. Moving on then to the New York Jets, I also think similar to the other New York team, they're going to double dip, and I think with Trent McDuffie sitting right there, I don't think how they can pass that up. Because they need help on the corner. They could potentially also get an edge rusher. They could get George Karlaftis as well. But I think they're going to be focusing on the cornerback position a lot, because there's some good depth in this class with the edge rushers. So I think taking the another top corner, probably the third top corner right now. It's probably going to be the choice that they end up making.
I like that pick. They did invest a ton in the secondary last year, so they could go in another direction. My pick for them would be Drake London. I think him and Zach Wilson together would be a very interesting duo, because Zach Wilson, especially in his rookie season, showed that he is more than willing to throw jump balls up to his receivers. And getting a guy like Drake London, who, I mean, I want to say he played 8 games and had 19 contested catch opportunities, or 19 contested catches. Something like that. But I do think like improving the secondary would be good, especially in the division with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis. So,
I like how you didn't mention any Patriots receivers.
well, because they all suck. No, I mean the Patriots have okay receivers, but nothing spectacular. Hopefully that'll change in this draft. But
yeah,
foreshadow. So up next is the Washington Commanders. I think this is a very interesting pick. They need interior offensive line, but kind of where they are, I don't really expect them to reach on a guy like Linderbaum and who is it? Zion Johnson, who's a little bit further back. So they might be a candidate to trade back. However, I do think that this could be the first opportunity for a linebacker to come off the board. I think Devin Lloyd is probably the number one number one linebacker in this class. Nakobe Dean is also a close second. But I think Devin Lloyd would give them an extremely good, rangy linebacker who would play really well behind that defensive line because he can play well in coverage. He can blitz. He has very good football IQ, and so I think he's a good fit here.
So in this scenario, I would go a different route, especially because with Carson Wentz coming in, he only has one receiver to really throw to, and that's going to be Terry McLaurin. And a receiver has not been taken off the board. I think they could take their favorite receiver, whether it be Drake London or Garrett Wilson. Not saying that you're wrong, but I think I could also see a scenario where Drake London and Garrett Wilson are off the board by this point. So then taking Devin Lloyd, who is arguably the best linebacker in this class, I think would be a good pick. I guess good pick. I think he's going to fit well. I think they would probably benefit a little bit better adding some weapons on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I know we just kind of talked about the Jets and how I think Drake London would be a really good fit there. However, I am not overly sold on very many of these wide receivers going in the top half of the first round. I think if any, those are the only two that you can make a case for. And even then, a guy like CeeDee Lamb went 17th overall. And I think CeeDee Lamb is far and away a better wide receiver than these guys. And I just don't necessarily think a lot of teams are going to see the true value of this wide receiver class in the first round.
That's fair.
So I think getting the top of the class linebacker is the way to go. So I think I'm going to stick with Devin Lloyd. But I do agree that they need to address the wide receiver position.
I like it. All right, now moving on now to number 12, the Minnesota Vikings, who need a lot of help, especially on the offensive line, edge rushers, and cornerback, obviously, as PFF greatly says. Luckily for them, there are some options that are here. George Karlaftis, as they ranked the top player, I think would be a good edge rusher here. Go down a little bit. What are some of the cornerbacks that might potentially be available?
Oh, the next wave is Andrew Booth and Kaiir Elam that are pretty.
It's going to be a little tight there, but we'll say the name. You just scroll past him, and I don't see why he's taken so far down there. Because I do like him. I think he has a lot of upside. And I think it's still a little early as there's still a lot of offensive line depth there. But seeing Jermaine Johnson there, adding on, especially in that division that they have, I think it's going to be – they're going to need to get after the quarterback. And I think bolstering up that defensive line, I think is going to be an option there. So I'm going to go Jermaine Johnson. Might be a little early for them, but
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay.
So, in my opinion, as a Patriots fan, I think there are three players that if they fall to the Patriots that they have to take, and Jermaine Johnson is one of them. I think Jermaine Johnson is criminally underrated in this class. Because he played for Florida State, and he is the only player from Florida State that is in this draft. Florida State football has gone very far downhill since the Jameis Winston days, and Jermaine Johnson performed extremely well at a very high level of football, and I just don't think people are taking as much notice because he plays at Florida State. He had one of the highest edge rushing and pass rush and running grades of all the defensive ends, and yet people are saying he's going in the back of the first round. I just don't understand it. So I like that pick a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, perfect then. So what you're saying is there's going to be mini Super Bowls coming now to all the Minnesota fans. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if he can do that, but I think he is the best edge setter in this class in the run game, and him and Aiden Hutchinson, I think, are the two most versatile guys in terms of being able to play the pass and the run. And I think people just don't realize it.
I like it. So. Okay. All right.
But up next are the Houston Texans with their second pick in the first round. So I had them taking Derek Stingley at 3. So they have a corner, and seeing kind of what they have, I think Brandon Cooks is a good wide receiver. They have Nico Collins, who's another one, but I do think Garrett Wilson is probably the pick here, unless you want to go with an edge guy like George Karlaftis. I just think Garrett Wilson will come in. I think you'll get a really good read of how good Davis Mills can be, and then I think you can invest later in your offensive line to help protect Davis Mills a little more. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, with the Texans, it's just going to be taking whoever they find is available. So I do agree with that. I think Nico Collins is going to have a good sophomore year. I liked what I saw out of him.
Yeah.
Brandon Cooks, I think he's had 1,000-yard receiving years for the past. I mean, he's an underrated receiver. Not too many people talk about it because he's with the Texans.
Yeah.
But he's one of the better receivers in the league. But he is getting a little bit older, and so having Garrett Wilson come in can learn. I think that gives Davis Mills in that offense a solid 3 potential weapons to throw to. I think you might have mentioned this already, but yeah, going offensive line here, I don't think would hurt. I was thinking potentially because they need help everywhere, drafting Tyler Linderbaum maybe as your stalwart center, for the next 10 to 15 years. Also potentially could be an option here, but that might be a little bit of a stretch for them. There's just so many different ways that they can go, and there's other centers, there's other offensive linemen that they can get here. So I like the Garrett Wilson pick, first receiver coming off the board here.
Yeah. And I know I think it's still a little rich for a receiver, but I just think he's probably the best player left. So
yeah, well, at this point, it's like, who's your favorite player? What do you like? What's your biggest need? It's that combination. What's your biggest need? I think combined with what's your favorite player, who's the most athletic.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's going to be the best athlete for your team can come in and contribute on day one. And so. Garrett Wilson, I think, can do that. I think George Karlaftis could do that. Drake London could do that as well. And so, but however, I think this guy is also going to need to be doing that. I think it's going to be a little early for him as well. But I think just considering what Baltimore really needs, and that is going to be, I would think, let's say defensive line help? I would think they also need offensive line help considering how banged up they were.
They need offensive line depth. That was probably one of their biggest things, was just how injured they got last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, so that way I'm just looking here, and I was watching the Braves game the other day when they got shellacked by the Nationals, and this guy, he was on. Pretty sure he threw out the first pitch as well. But the Jordan Davis, the big guy from Georgia, I think is going to be taken right here. I think just with how run-focused they are and how run-focused that division is, having just a big boy that you can go put in front of that center, have to take up 2 guys to block, I think is going to fit really well with them. And also that's just kind of the way that they like to play football. They like to play smash-mouth football. I know the Eagles were first in the league in rushing last year, but Baltimore was second. And I feel like they've always have been in the top 3. They love running the ball, helps with Lamar Jackson as well. But then also with coming through on the defense side of the ball as well. When you have to play the Browns, you have to play the Bengals as well every single year. I think that this is going to be something that they address and can be a great addition to the team.
Yeah, I really like the Jordan Davis pick. I think that putting him in there, Calais Campbell, I don't know if he's back with the team or if he's still a free agent, but he is definitely getting older. I think that is a great pick for them to plug up the middle of the field. So, and then up next is the Philadelphia Eagles, who you previously mentioned, and I think this is a really interesting pick. They did a little bit of a trade with New Orleans, so they have 2 first-round picks this year and 2 next year, and I am not entirely sure on what I think they're going to do. They have a few needs, linebacker and defensive back. I don't think that defensive back is a good value here. But I think it's Brandon Graham, one of their edge rushers, is a free agent. And I think George Karlaftis would be a fantastic fit because he is just a very smash-mouth, aggressive defensive end, very violent, and I think he would just fit in very well with that Philadelphia defense.
Yeah, I think so as well. Especially, you're talking about value. He's considered here the 10th best player or just prospect in the draft, and getting him at 15, I think is going to be a great value. I think shoring up that defensive line. Because if I'm not mistaken, don't they have one of the better secondaries in the league? One of the issues last year was their front 7.
No, it was kind of reverse. Their secondary is a little bit weaker. They lost Malcolm Jenkins, and then they have a few good young corners. But Patrick Peterson went to the Vikings. Darius Slay was the other one that they had, but he's getting older. So they need to invest at that cornerback position.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so now moving on, Eagles did have 3 picks, but they ended up trading actually with the New Orleans Saints. Yeah. They got a couple extra picks. Now the Saints have the 16th pick here, and when I saw this, I think for me personally, they saw a lot of value with who they projected was going to be around here, and so I have. Oh well, no, you have their next pick. So I'm curious who you're going to take with them. But for me, I think it means that they want to get a receiver and then also address the offensive line, and those are going to be the players that are available here. So for me, I'm looking at Drake London. That's right there. I think Drake London is they need receivers because the whole system organization is kind of in shambles right now, just with their cap space and everything. And when it comes to their receiver position, they don't really have anyone. Marquez Callaway, I think, was their number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
Was receiver 1 last year. He was not their number 1 receiver statistically. So yeah. I think that's going to be who they end up drafting just in this scenario.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then who, kind of which direction you'll go with them here in a couple picks.
Yeah. No. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll see kind of who gets taken here in the next two picks. But up next is the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that the Chargers are in a really unique position. I think that they added a ton this offseason with J.C. Jackson. They kept who's their big wide receiver? Not Michael Thomas.
Michael Williams.
Michael Williams. They still have Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Josh Palmer, who was a guy that they drafted last year. And then they added, I don't know if I already mentioned, J.C. Jackson and then Khalil Mack to the defense. So to me, if Jordan Davis is here, that is the clear pick. However, you broke all Chargers fans' hearts with the Ravens taking them. I don't think picking a guy like Devontae Wyatt, who's not known for his run stuffing capabilities, is a good pick here. So I actually think that they are going to draft a guy like Jameson Williams, and I think later in the year he'll come back and have a larger impact on this offense. But I think that they are one of the few teams that can afford to draft Jameson Williams, who just tore his ACL, and then kind of keep him and still be a functioning team if he does not come back and is ready to play right away.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you agree with my analysis?
No. I mean, I agree. Like, I think that is. I think he's going to come back, and whichever team he picks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Chargers are the ones. I could see the Eagles doing it right here. Personally, but with the Chargers, though, I think I think picking offensive line. I know they addressed it a lot. I think. Also would have been a good option there. I think taking the Devontae Wyatt or Nakobe Dean, getting someone then to pair him up with Khalil Mack as well to help stop that run defense. That was the number one issue here.
Yeah.
I think getting a receiver here now is just going to make that receiver room now really crowded because, like you said, you have Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, I think is how you pronounce it. Then you also still have then the Donald Parham, and then you have who's their other tight end? Is it Jared Cook? Is it Jared?
Yeah,
Cook?
I think Jared Cook is still there.
Yeah, so I just think that's really crowded. Not saying that they can't add receiver, but I think they could wait a couple rounds to add another receiver.
Yeah.
They could wait in the third round, get John Mechie. Who also had an ACL tear, who some considered, right, if I'm not mistaken, better than Jameson Williams?
Jameson Williams was better. If Jameson Williams didn't tear his ACL, he's a top 10 pick.
Oh, okay. All right. Not like they would benefit from that pick in the long run.
Yeah.
But I think if they're trying to win now, it's someone that can come in and play from day one and help win the division, potentially win a Super Bowl this year. I don't think Jameson Williams would be that pick.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's fair, though, about Devontae Wyatt, though, where he's not the run-stuffing guy.
No, he's not.
So if this is Jordan Davis, though, easy pick right there.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's kind of why I went off on that little tangent. But I think, especially in an arms race that is going on in the AFC West right now, I think adding a weapon like Jameson Williams not only gives them flexibility now, but I think in the long term, because Keenan Allen is in his 30s. I know they just signed Mike Williams to a big contract, but guys like Jalen Guyton may not be around for very long. And so I just think getting a guy like Jameson Williams gives them a bona fide weapon for the next 5 years. In that really competitive AFC West specifically. So
no, that's fair.
So
yeah, that's fair. That's a good point here. And so now moving on then to the Eagles, who just took George Karlaftis as their edge rusher. I'm going to then scroll down a little bit here. I was curious about one thing. I would say, I think in the past we have had him take a receiver. Because I think that normally there's just plenty here, and I think that it would be good value. But since they traded that pick, I think that I would have them address that linebacker position, which Nakobe Dean's sitting right there. I think that would be a solid one. Another one, kind of then also, I would say going off of your based on what you were just saying there with Jameson Williams come off an injury. Another interesting one I think would also be David Ajabo potentially. I know that's a little high, but he was projected to be in the top 10, top 15 coming off. But now he tore his Achilles. So it will be interesting to see if that is kind of the route that they end up going. I don't think it would. I think Nakobe Dean, I think, would be the one that they would end up taking.
In this scenario, I doubt they would take Ajabo since they took Karlaftis at 15.
That's fair.
But I do think if they go like a Jameson Williams at 15, Ajabo would be a guy that would be an interesting pick at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you going with Nakobe Dean?
Yeah. Let's go with Nakobe Dean here.
Okay. I like that pick. He plays so much bigger than his size, and everybody knocks him on that. But he is such a physical downhill player. All right, up next is the New Orleans Saints. I feel like this one is pretty easy. They took Drake London with the first one, wide receiver. I think Bernard Raymond is still here at tackle, or Trevor Penning. You can kind of pick whichever one suits your fancy. I am a little bit lower on Trevor Penning. I think he is a holding machine. And I just really like Bernard Raymond's tape. He's extremely physical and athletic. So I'm going to go with Bernard Raymond here.
That's who I was going to go with as well. If I was picking 16 then 18, I would also have then gone receiver, offensive line, because that's really what they need. So I like that pick. Or as you also mentioned, Trevor Penning as well would have been an interesting one. So, but all right, now moving on then to the Pittsburgh Steelers. For me, a lot of different routes they can go here. I know some people think this might be where the first quarterback might be taken off the list. Really kind of a lot of different ways that they can go. I don't really think – for me, I will say they had a lot of stuff happen kind of over the past couple of years, especially with their offensive line. And something similar as what I said, I forgot which team it was. I think it might have been Minnesota or Houston. I think this might be something that they do here. But I think they're going to take Tyler Linderbaum, kind of get that center that they have for the future. I think this is a good spot to get them here. They just signed Mitch Trubisky. I think they have some hope with him. I think that this might be the best route to go, especially just consider just a lot of the question marks coming along with the QBs.
And I know, if I remember reading correctly, the center that they had this past year played better at guard. So drafting a guy like Linderbaum would allow the center from last season to play guard in a position that he's more comfortable with. And I like that pick. I think solidifying the interior of that offensive line, especially with Najee Harris in the backfield, is something that they're going to have to do. Najee Harris, I know he had a great rookie season, but it could have been so much better if that offensive line was semi-capable. So.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like that with any running back. I mean, shoot, look at Saquon Barkley. We have him in this draft class, doubling up on the offensive line. Let's say that it works out for those picks. Saquon Barkley could have like a breakout year, you know. And so because it's amazing what happens when you have an offensive line in front of you. Shoot, Devontae Freeman, the year the Falcons won the Super Bowl, was one of the leading rushers, and it was only because Falcons were the only team. That offensive line was the only team where all 5 offensive linemen started every game in the regular season, and so that offense was dominant So, but having a good offensive line changes everything. I think that they think Pittsburgh knows that. That's why they got Mitchell Trubisky on a relatively team-friendly contract. And they're going to be bolstering up all the other picks around them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Up next are my New England Patriots. And this is an interesting one because I very much expect the Patriots to trade back here. I can envision a scenario with guys like Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, and Sky Moore still on the board, that Kansas City is going to want to be moving up from this 29th spot to get in front of Green Bay for the guy that they would like. I just have that scenario in my head. But we're not doing trades in this mock draft. So I think the Patriots have to go with the best player on the board. And I like Chris Olave. I think he is an extremely polished route runner. To me, I just think he is the closest thing the Patriots can get to Devontae Smith, who Mac Jones loved in college. And I just think that he is probably the pick here. I will ask you, do you think it would be worth it for the Patriots to jump on one of these corners here? Or do you think that the Patriots are going to try to find value at corner later?
Both. I think they'll try and find value at corner later. But I do like what you just said there with the trading up. Another team also that might potentially trade up here as well, because they also have 2 picks here relatively soon, is also the Lions. If there's something where they really want to take a potential quarterback as well, and quarterbacks start falling off the board. There's a couple teams in between this point and when the Lions next pick that might be interested in taking a quarterback. So there is some potential, some possibility that they trade back. Right here, I think Chris Olave is great for the value. I think it almost would be better to take the best receiver available right now than to maybe take a stretch on a cornerback that might not make it. When you can, I think they have a second-round pick, don't they?
Yeah, they have a second, a third, and a fourth, 2 fifths, and 2 sixths.
Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to get value on this cornerback if they don't trade back. I do agree with you, though. I think trading here might be a solid option for them.
Yeah. But I think if Chris Olave makes it here, I think that's a hard one to pass up for the Patriots.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you. So now moving on to the Green Bay Packers, who I think we're going to start seeing now kind of this second wave of receivers come off the board, because I think then also Treylon Burks is going to be the guy that they end up taking. I think he fits well within that system. They need to have a big physical receiver like him since Devontae Adams is now not there, because that receiver room is looking kind of bare. So I think they're going to go with Treylon Burks here. I know there's a lot of other receivers that you mentioned that you would like. Sky Moore is one. Is there anyone else that you think that they might potentially take here with this first?
Not with this first one. I think that this is probably a little rich for Treylon Burks. Athletically, the guy is gifted in spades. Like it's not even close. But just as far as like refinement, he's not quite as developed as some of the other guys. But I think at 22, I think that they're going to guarantee themselves Aaron Rodgers a weapon, and I just think that is worth it for them. So
yeah, I agree.
So yeah, and then up next is the Arizona Cardinals. So this is, in my opinion, a really interesting pick because they lost Chandler Jones, so they could be looking at a Devontae Wyatt. They could reach on one of these corners right here. Oh, I say reach loosely, but they could grab one of these corners right here. But I actually think that it's going to be neither of these guys. I think Zion Johnson is going to come off the board here. He can play guard and center and really help solidify the interior of that offensive line. And in that division, playing San Francisco and the Los Angeles Rams, I think that they have to do that, or else Kyler Murray is going to turn into Russell Wilson 2.0, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, especially with also how Arizona has fallen, there's a consistent trend of falling in the second half of seasons. They need to have a consistent, tough offensive line that can bring it every single week, and just adding depth, adding nasty guys like that up front to help them with the run game. Because I think because James Conner is the guy now, right? Because Chase Edmonds went to Miami. Yeah, so they're going to want James Conner to stay upright. They're going to want him to give him some holes because he's still a solid running back. Also got to keep Kyler Murray up as well. So I think that's a solid option. I like solidifying the offensive line in almost any scenario. So then moving on to Dallas here. Who are some of the top guys that they have that we still have available here? I think at this point, though, I mean, I know there's a lot of cornerbacks here, but I mean, Devontae Wyatt's fallen this far, that's what I think you got to say. I think you got to take Devontae Wyatt.
Yeah, I think because they lost Randy Gregory, I think Devontae Wyatt is a great replacement for Randy Gregory, and I just think he's a good fit. So yeah. But then up next are the Buffalo Bills. This is an interesting one because, in my opinion, there's not really any wide receivers left. There's no defensive linemen left, really. I mean, you have David Ajabo, who I think that they could take a risk on, but they're still pretty rich at the edge position because they took 2 last year. And then they just signed Von Miller. So I think corner is probably the way to go. On the other side of I forget his name. We're having a tough time with names tonight. He got hurt last year. Tre'Davious White. But I think Andrew Booth is probably the next best corner. And I think he's a plug and play on the opposite side of Tre'Davious White for them.
I like it. Yeah, the Bills don't have too much really they need to add. They just need to just stay consistent and don't drop off too much because, I mean, they're a Super Bowl contender now and still one of the best football games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, that was such a great game.
Yeah.
And curious to kind of see how they bounce back, especially after that. They couldn't have really done anything else, maybe besides not lose to the which team did they lose to? Because in that gave the Titans home field advantage. I'm trying to remember. So
I don't remember.
They had a couple. They'd just be consistent, you know.
Yeah.
Because they can definitely have a home field advantage here. The team's got to go up into Buffalo in January. That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
So. But I'm on to the Tennessee Titans, where I am now currently living in Nashville, Tennessee, and I know a lot of people here, they want to take a quarterback, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think adding Trevor Penning right here helps solidify that offensive line. Taylor Lewan is their left tackle, who's a nasty, nasty guy. Really good, however, he's just injury prone. Same thing with a lot of their offensive line here. I think Trevor Penning's going to be the best value here. It's solidifying that offensive line. They could also go on the defensive side as well. Maybe take a flyer on potentially David Ajabo or on one of these corners as well. But I think their whole game is running the ball through Derrick Henry, and they need to have an offensive line for that. So so I'm going with Trevor Penning here.
Okay. No, I think that's a great pick. I'm curious to see if he'll start out at right tackle and they'll kind of do what Penei Sewell did last year and put him at right tackle because they have a bona fide starter at
left tackle.
So, but up next are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I have an interesting pick here. So this is a guy that I think isn't getting quite enough hype, but Travis Jones, the defensive tackle out of Connecticut, is a monster. 6'4", 325. He's a nose tackle, but he has just as much pass rushing upside as Jordan Davis does out of Georgia. And I think with Ndamukong Suh approaching on, I think, the latter half of his mid-30s, I just think Travis Jones is a guy that they can draft here at the end of this first round, and no matter what happens, that they will have a guy who can play nose tackle and be a force in the middle next year.
Well, and imagine, let's say, if they had like a 4-3 package, you had Travis Jones and Vita Vea as the two defensive tackles. I mean, that's just absolutely going to be tough to stop, and it'd be fun to watch until they're playing the Falcons. But yeah, I think that's a pick. At this point in the draft, with all these teams, you're just trying to find the best value that you can, really. And so, because, for example, they're moving to Green Bay here, so there's not really, if you want to scroll down for me, there's a little bit, it's not too many pieces here, because I was thinking the offensive line would also be
Kenyon Green is the next one.
Kenyon Green would be the next one as well. I would say that they're fine, honestly, in the safety area. In the cornerback area. I don't know, where are you leaning towards here?
So I'm usually not for drafting two wide receivers. However, I think Sky Moore out of Western Michigan is really interesting. Him and Treylon Burks have completely different skill sets. Sky Moore is like kind of the small slot receiver, who it reminds me actually a ton of Julian Edelman with just kind of his feistiness and ability after the catch, except he's way more explosive off the ball than Julian Edelman. And Treylon Burks is kind of like A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, but on steroids. Like just get the ball in his hands and let him run type of guy. So I think that would be a really interesting pick. I think they have the ability to do it. I think their defense is still pretty solid. And I think that they can bolster up some of that offensive line later in the draft. So that's what I'm leaning towards, but
Yeah. I'm trying to link. So I don't think they would do that because I think they'd want to address the other side of the ball, and I think they would want to address the offensive line as well, just to help out with any run game. But because I do like Sky Moore, I'm leaning though towards the defensive line, and I saw Boye Mafe there as well. I just think that they're going to want to keep bolstering up the pass rush and also the defensive line just in general. So not that I disagree with what you were saying. I don't think that they would double dip, especially here at this point in the draft.
Yeah. Okay, so Boye Mafe is going to be your pick?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I really like Sky Moore, and I think the Packers are going to want to do a lot to replace Devontae Adams. And honestly, still, I think fair. If they double dipped, I don't even think that they would be able to replace it. So
yeah, that's fair.
Up next, the Kansas City Chiefs, wide receiver, D line, and cornerback are their needs. They could also bolster up the right side of that offensive line and kind of fix some of the issues that they were having over there. I don't think D-line is where they're not gonna get that here. Corner and wide receiver, Kyer Elam or Sky Moore are the two that I'm picking between. They re-signed Travarius Ward.
But I will say they do have back-to-back picks, so you could take both of them.
Yeah. They do have Travarius Ward. I think Elam is probably the pick here. I just think he's the better value. And he's probably the last first-round corner, in my opinion. So
okay. Well, now I see as well why you didn't pick either one because technically I'm picking now, but I'm going to go with Sky Moore.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. I think that they go with where they're at. They're going to be able to pick which receiver they want, also with cornerback they want. They potentially could trade up as well. But even then, let's say they take a receiver, then there's going to be a cornerback here that I think that they'll like.
Yeah, exactly. Because Kyler Gordon and Roger McCreary, I think, are the last two high value corners. Kyler Gordon was just kind of playing second fiddle to Trent McDuffie, and then Roger McCreary would be a first round pick, but he has really short arms. So,
I see just a little,
but okay. So you say that, and it is kind of a joke, but I never noticed it. But then once they said he had he has 27-inch arms or something, I notice it now. On film, he does look like he has little itty bitty arms.
27-inch arms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To put that in perspective,
not across, not 27 inches across, right? One arm is 27.
Yeah, one arm is 27 inches. Yeah. That would be literal T-Rex arms.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of now I'm trying to think of how long my arms are.
It's from fingertip to shoulder, I think, is the length. Is how they measure it. I'm not entirely sure. But up next are the Cincinnati Bengals. They did a lot to kind of bolster up that offensive line, signing Ted Karras from the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And then did they get Teron Armstead, or was it Lyle Collins? I think it was Lyle Collins from the Cowboys. And so I don't really think that there is a whole lot else that they can do for that in the draft right now to kind of solidify that offensive line, just with kind of how the board has fallen. So one of the guys that I think they struggled with last year was their safety. He had a All-Pro year 2 years ago, but then didn't play nearly as well this past season. And I think Lewis Seen is a good pick for them right here. I just think he's a really good all-around safety. And granted, I think they could go maybe linebacker, but again, I like Logan Wilson. So
yeah, no, I agree. There are two big things for them was going to be offensive line, and then secondary.
Yeah.
And they really addressed the offensive line. Still potentially could go offensive line here, but with the way that this draft has gone, I think going with their favorite secondary player is going to be the one. It is going to be the route that they go. I think Lewis Seen is going to be great. I think Jalen Petrie also would fit in well. You still also have Daxton Hill there. They're going to have options on which player that they find that's going to best fit in, because really then now that the offensive line is bolstered up, Joe Mixon, who missed a game now, I think was second in rushing yards, only behind Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, who, he beat Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry would have broken 2,000 yards if he didn't get hurt. So that offense is going to be ridiculous. And if they can get a secondary, because that front seven plays the same as they did last year, which it's going to be tough to replicate, but get a competent secondary, and that's going to be a tough team to play, an already tough team to play.
Yeah, 100%.
But lastly, just moving into the final pick of the first round, the Detroit Lions are picking again, and a lot of different routes that they can go here. Potentially could see the first quarterback taken off the board here. But I think that I just mentioned his name. I think they're going to really want to address the secondary as well, just because they had some injuries, and provide some depth and can kind of continue that trend of, or just the theme of their draft is going to be addressing the defense. So I'm going to go with Jalen Petrie here as this pick. I think there's a lot of different routes that could go on the cornerback pick, but I think Jalen Petrie is going to be the guy that they end up going with here. What are your overall thoughts on?
I like that pick. He is a little bit bigger, and is more of a box safety / slot corner. But he's extremely athletic. Baylor's defense was as good as it was last year because he, one, is a good player, but I think he's also a good leader. So I like that pick to round out the first round. I think him and Jeff Okudah are a good pairing. So
I like it. I'm curious now with the Lions with that pick. They'll see what Green Bay has done. Let's say they don't trade any of their picks. They'll see what Green Bay has done. So I wonder if that will influence their decision. If let's say they go with Treylon Burks, like how I have them going, will they get a big cornerback to match up with him?
Yeah.
Or if they go with a slot guy like Sky Moore, then would they try and get a rangy linebacker that could match him, or go safety that could match up with him as well? Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if that plays any effect into that team. I know it would be weird picking one person just based off what one team did in the draft.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious how much that would play.
I think it's smart. The Patriots did that for years they aligned themselves to win the division first. And so I feel like it would be smart to do that, but you also have to be careful and not get in a race of and not try and outsmart the draft. You can't try and do that. I think you still kind of have to pick the best player, but if it works out so that you can pick a guy you think matches up well in your division, then I feel like that's a bit even a bonus. So
yeah, I agree.
So yeah. But let us know in the comments what you thought of this mock draft. We will be going live for the NFL draft on April 28th, I believe, at 7 p.m. To talk about the draft as the picks come in live. So if you would like to join us, we would very much appreciate you. And other than that, I think that is going to do it for this episode of the Tracy Take, and we will see you guys next time.